Please use these doors. I am thrilled to present Iain Gillott, who's the president of iGR Research. Iain and I go way back, at least 15 years. We're getting old. And he started out his career, well, he didn't start out his career, but I knew him when he was with Group Vice President of IDC's telecommunications practice, where he managed their global research on mobile and wireless communications, internet access, and telecom brands. Since then, Iain has founded his own company. He is an accomplished wireless and mobile industry expert and analyst, and he's an accomplished presenter. And also, I suspect you will find out today, he's someone who's quite quotable. So please join me in welcoming Iain Gillott.
Okay, so I have these rules for speaking at these things. The first rule is never speak on the first day, never speak on the end of anything, right? Last day, first day or second day. Never speak before lunch, never speak after lunch. After lunch, everybody's asleep. But the golden rule is never, ever speak while somebody is eating. Because it's all clink, clank, clink, clank, clink, clank, right? So Tracy said, hey, I've got you on the second day for lunch. I'm like, thanks, Tracy. Known you all these years, this is what I get. If anybody offers you a speaking slot at a conference, you always want about 10 o'clock on the second morning. It's perfect. People have recovered from the night before, they're a little hungover, they've had an hour or two. You don't want an 8 a.m. slot too early. Go for about 10 or 11, but not right before lunch. So I'm not too bad here. Couple of things. The title on this is wrong because I forgot to change it. The version you guys will get will be correct. There's all my contact info and things like that. So what I'm going to do, I've got a few things to tell you first about what we do and a few things like this, then we'll get into some numbers, okay? I'm a numbers guy, so where the carriers or some of the vendors may not be able to tell you what their ARPU is or how big the market is or what percentage is indoor or outdoor, that's what we try and do, is put some boundaries around things and size markets and the opportunities. What we've tried to do is kind of show you all the methodology around that, and we'll talk about that today. So what we do, we don't do much by the looks of things. There we go. So basically, let me build this slide. We're a market research company. I've had this company about 13 years. We make money by selling stuff to vendors and carriers and the markets. I'm going to talk about a report we have out. It's actually an amalgamation of 3 different reports that sizes the market for small cells. Some of you in the room have already purchased it. So I am not going to give you all the numbers, okay? Because A, the people who've purchased it are going to be a little unhappy with me. And then secondly, I have got children who need shoes and food. And my daughter is going to college in the fall. I have to fund that. Okay? This is how we do this. So what we do market research, we do a lot of surveys, we do a lot of focus groups, we spend a lot of time talking to end users. I will show you some of that data today. We have a lot of custom research. We do business modeling, competitive analysis, as again, surveys. We also have 3 subscription services where you can buy research for a year. You get all of the research around 3 different areas. Wireless and mobile is the one up there. Wireless and mobile landscapes, we call it. It looks at smartphones and tablets and bandwidth and churn and all the carriers. It's really the market as a whole. The rural markets looks at the rural and regional operators and gives a breakdown of the operators that are not the top 4, okay? And it's a slightly different market, so we kind of break out some of those stats there. And then the one, of course, that's interesting here is small cell architectures, which looks at HetNets and Wi-Fi and small cells and picocells and femtocells and all the issues around it, which is why we're here today, of course. A lot of what we have gets used for content marketing. We do a lot of white papers. The research gets pulled into different promotions and products by different vendors and things like this. So you'll see stuff around quite a bit. Okay, so let's start out with the big question. Is what is and what is not a small cell. I will make a very quotable statement according to Tracy. No small cell forecast is wrong, ever. Because what is a small cell? It is whatever you want it to be. Okay? Therefore, you can size any market you like and show any growth. I guarantee you'll be correct. Okay? What we've done is kind of looked at this and said, okay, here's the bad news. Everybody has a different definition of what a small cell is. It really depends on what you're selling. Now, one of the big vendors who will remain nameless to protect the guilty, a couple of years ago, they had an analyst conference I was at, and they were talking about HetNet and small cells and all these things. And I asked them a question and said, is Wi-Fi part of HetNet? And they said, absolutely, categorically, no. I said, well, why not? They said, because it does not use licensed spectrum from the operators. It is not part of HetNet. Okay, good. Year later, same conference, same question. The answer was absolutely, categorically, yes. It is part of HetNet. Why? Because we just bought 2 companies that do Wi-Fi carrier managed, and now we have a solution, and we didn't have one before. So it depends on what you're selling, right? It really does. My view is, if it is not nailed to a tower, it is small. Okay? That's it. Right? Frankly, let's be serious here, right? If we could go and build another 300,000 towers or whatever in this country, 100,000 towers, we would. People have been trying to do that. You cannot physically do it. You will not get permission to do it. And we've got to put them in places like outside of here or in my backyard. You're not going to put a tower in my backyard, just outside my backyard, because there's a nature preserve there, and my wife won't let you. But yes, will she complain about coverage? Of course she will. So we have to come up with another solution. We can't build more towers. Therefore, we need small cells. A small cell is anything that was on a tower and now is no longer on a tower because we can't build any more of them. That's it. And I'll tell you what includes in a second. What we've done to kind of get a hand around this is size the whole market, looking at each market segment. And what I'm going to do for the rest of the presentation is go through these and kind of show you how we did it and the assumptions we made and what the market drivers are and all those good things. Thanks. Black's good, thank you. I love the PCIe, guys. Okay, so first one up is residential femtocell. Who has a femtocell? Yeah, that's about right. We'll talk about that. Who knows what a femtocell is? That's about right as well. Who daren't put their hand up because they don't want to appear stupid at a small cell forum event? Okay, one honest person at the front, thank you. Sales guy. We have published the femtocell report. It is out there, and I'm going to tell you what's in it and how we did it. Enterprise picocells. These are picocells. They are small cells that go into a small, medium business. Generally speaking, our view is that any building under 100,000 square feet is a good market for an enterprise picocell. You can go drop a couple of them in there and have pretty good coverage. We'll talk about the drivers for that market and how it gets a little bit bigger. Carrier metro cell is a small cell that goes outside for the carrier. Okay? It's the stuff they start putting on light poles and all those types of things. Okay? We'll talk about that. All 3 of these we've published research on. The final one is in-building DAS, which, considering with the DAS forum event, is probably a good thing to mention. I have that report in my inbox for a final edit right now, and we've sized the market, and I'll tell you what we've done, okay? So we can talk about DAS as well. So this is what we'll talk about today, and we'll kind of go from there. Now, at the end of this, you've got 2 choices. You can go home and go on the tour and all those things. Tracy will send you the presentations. If you give me your business card, I will send you the presentation this afternoon. I'm faster than Tracy is. I will also send you a code for a discount for any of these reports. And when that DAS report is published in a couple of days, I'll send you an email before anybody else gets it, okay? So that's my teaser for you, if you like. Okay, so this is the official definition of small cells, and I've added a few things to it. So femtocells, we all know about. They're small. They cover tens of meters, home, Soho. I have one in my house. I can get up to 8 people on it. It works great. We have 4 iPhones in the house. Provides great coverage. Wi-Fi, you all know what Wi-Fi is, and it's just about everywhere, of course. Is Wi-Fi a small cell? Well, it's small and it's indoor, it's outdoor, etc. Really, when you think about it, what a small cell is doing is saying, I've got a capacity or a coverage problem in a location, that I need to solve. From an end user perspective, you don't care if it's femto, pico, repeater, booster, DAS. You don't care. You care about the fact you can pull out your phone and make a phone call or get a data connection. That's all my kids and my wife care about. They don't care how it happened. So trying to say to the end user, well, that's not really a small cell because it's not doing this, this, and this, they don't care. So really, all of these things become small cells, and that's why I said if it's not nailed to a tower, that's what it's trying to do. Pico cells, obviously a little bit bigger than the femtos there, as you can see. And as I said, medium business, large business, some small business as well. Some venues, we'll talk about that. Metro cells, city centers, suburban, urban, large outdoors, 5 to 10 watt. And then, of course, we get macro cells. Macro cells are not small cells, unless it's in the basement of a building with a remote radio head going to radio heads around the outside of a building, or something like that. One of the very big operators, who I won't mention, but they're very proud of their network, really proud of their network, and they don't ride motorbikes. Think about that. Explain this to me. Okay, you've got this very attractive spokeswoman who rides around in motorbikes promoting speed. You launch a brand new LTE advanced network ahead of everybody else, LTE advanced, not LTE, with an iPhone that people have been waiting for the last 20 years for you to launch, and you fire your spokesperson? Explain that. I don't get it. She was too hot. Maybe that's the case. I don't know. I will tell you, I did meet her, Carly Forsty, I think her name is. I met her a couple of years ago at CES. T-Mobile had an event, and she was very perky, and she came out in a little pink dress, and she kind of, and she's about 6 foot tall, and she's very attractive. And afterward, there's all press and analysts there. They had Dell there, and Samsung, and LG, all these brand new tablet devices, and all this stuff, and all these guys doing demos. They were all lined up on one side of the room talking to nobody, because there was a line literally went all the way around the room on the other side to stand and have your photograph taken with her. And even some of the Dell guys and the other guys went over there to get in line. It was, yeah, it's what you're selling, right? So, finally, I need to talk about repeaters. Oh, so remote radio head. One of the operators says remote radio head is small cell. And when they talk about the numbers of small cells they will deploy in the next few years, they are including remote radio head, which you can argue is a macro cell with the radio split off and stuffed on a pole or wherever it is. Okay? So again, you've got to be very careful how these numbers break out. The final one is repeaters and signal boosters. Come back to my definition of what the end user is trying to solve. The end user is trying to get coverage and capacity in a place where they can't get it. A signal booster does that, or a repeater does that in a building. From a carrier perspective, it probably doesn't increase your capacity, but it certainly increases the coverage. So for the end user, same result. So all of those things come into small cells. All right, let's talk about femtocells. I made these charts really big, and I actually redid these last night because I was sitting at the back of the room yesterday looking at the monitors, and it's kind of hard to read the small print, so I kind of blew things up. This is a survey we did in March, and we said to people, 1,053 consumers. Firstly, actually, no, this is not a good one to do this on. So what we said was, how would you rate the quality of the voice connection in your home, the reception? The blue area there says 33%, said it's excellent. These guys down here, 35% said it was very good, 20% said it was good, 7% said it was poor, 2% said it was terrible, and 1.5% said it's so bad I don't even use the phone in my house, right? I actually fell into these categories here. Anybody in this category, so 7, 2.5, so about 11%, basically can't get a good connection in their home. Hello, femtocell, right? So that's really the addressable market for these things in terms of what we're looking at. Then we said, okay, we told them what a femtocell was. We gave them some product names of the ones that were on the market. We kind of described it was a box that would give you 5 bars of coverage inside your house. And we said, well, do you have a femtocell? 2% said, yeah, I got a femtocell. There's 110 million households in the United States, so 2% is about, what, 2.2 million, right? It's about right, actually. Maybe a little high. 46% said, no, I don't have one. Great. 7% said, I don't know if I have one or not, and I don't know if I don't know what one is either. So they're kind of in the Donald Rumsfeld, you don't know what you don't know, or we've got known unknowns, do you remember that thing, right? Generally speaking, when you do market research, you get pretty cynical about the general population as a whole. There's about 5% of the population really no use to anybody at all. They have no value, right? So questions we ask are things like, do you have children? That's a fairly easy one to answer. And yet, every survey we do, we get 1 or 2% say, I don't know. Honey, are they still here? They may not know if they have children. It's true. They may not know, but you get my point. So 7% here really don't know. But the interesting thing is, after we described what a femtocell was, we gave them product names. We told them who sells them. 45% said, I don't know what you're talking about, right? So the challenge with the femtocell market is not the technology. The demand is there, right? We've got 11% of households just in terrible coverage. The problem is that people just don't even know they exist. And it is a problem, from a carrier perspective, it's a tough sell, right? You've got to be careful because you go, oh yeah, you've got really bad coverage at your house on our network, so I'm going to sell you another box to fix my problem, right? That's how it can look. And that's the challenge with these things. The cost is coming down and down and down. We've looked at the cost of these things, and it will get better. The other thing with femtocells is what happens with LTE. Because these are 3G units. I have one in my house, it's 3G. I have an LTE iPhone, so it doesn't work on 3G in my house. But if you think about LTE, LTE is all about IP and data and nice fast speeds, right? My house has got Wi-Fi in it. I don't need another data connection in my house. I've got Wi-Fi. Then you get to VoLTE eventually, voice over LTE in a couple of years' time. Do you really want to start putting VoLTE into a femtocell with the added cost just to do voice, where maybe you could do it with some IP tunneling, voice over IP type service on Wi-Fi? That's something to think about. And that's a tough challenge for the femtocell guys, is to get to that cost point where you've got LTE in there. If you think about AT&T and Verizon, I live in Austin, Texas, which is an AT&T market. They market UVerse to me very heavily since they dug up my front yard to put it in. They market to me a couple of times a week. I get some promotion or something to do it. Well, if they built in voice connected to the wireless phone, tunneling through the Wi-Fi, et cetera, all integrated, it's probably going to be a pretty easy sell for us. So there's things like that start to come up. So femtocells, yeah, they solve the problem, but what do you do with them in a few years' time? It becomes an interesting question. So this is the market for the femtocells. I will tell you, it is big. It is over 10 million, the addressable market's over 10 million units, easy. And it actually grows about 1.5% a year. What's interesting is not only do the number of houses grow, we actually grew we assumed the coverage would get better on the networks. So fewer houses would have problems, right? And still the market grows. So 1.5% compounded annual growth rate doesn't get any venture capitalists excited. But when there's an untapped market there of 10 million plus, then it's pretty good. All right, picocells. This is the eye chart. So we assumed a few things with a picocell. We're going to put a picocell into a building, into an office. It could be let's say, a small law firm. The enterprise picocells can take up to 32 simultaneous calls. Okay? They cover, I don't know what the square footage is. But when you look at it, the limiting factor is not the area they cover, it's the number of people that are actually going to have access to it. Okay? So what you've got to look at is how many people are in offices and how many people are in buildings. So what we assumed is, A, only the employees with access. If you were walking beside the building and it had a picocell, you would not be able to hop onto it as a passerby and use that capacity. Okay? This is an important point because Qualcomm, anybody here from Qualcomm? No? Qualcomm has a model that they deploy all these femtocells and picocells in all these buildings and offices, and as you're walking down the street, you will hop from one to the other, etc., etc. I don't see that. You're not doing it in my house. I'm locking the thing down, right? It's bad enough I've got teenagers using it. I do not want people on the street walking by using it as well. To give you an idea of the problems I have in my house, we're on a mobile share plan. We've got 4 iPhones. Last November, I got a warning telling me we're getting near the limit on our data usage. We've never done that. We got like 10 gigs a month for me when I travel. Suddenly I'm getting close, and it's like halfway through the month. So I went online and looked at who was using it, and my kids, 18 and 15, had gone from doing half a gig to a gig a month, up to 1.5 to 2 gig a month, like that. So I cornered them and I said, okay, what are you guys doing? Oh, Dad, it's really bad. It's really bad. Like, okay, what's really bad? School blocked Facebook on the Wi-Fi system at school. Okay. Yeah, so I have to get my phone out and use that to get to Facebook. It's like, why don't you just wait till you get home? Oh, no, I'm going to check it out through the day. So, and it's funny because this lasted a few months, then I think the school opened up the Wi-Fi again because there were so many complaints from the parents. Excuse me, can you please? What I should tell you is Dell's kids go to my kids' school, and there's Wi-Fi everywhere. They're required to have a laptop. A lot of the classes are interactive and online, all this type of thing. So they encourage use of Wi-Fi, but they shut down access to Facebook. And of course, the social life of the entire school ground to a halt. Nobody could talk to each other. It was a disaster. These are the challenges we face in today's world. So we're not going to open them up. We're also probably not going to put them in large venues, stadiums, for use by given subscribers. And AT&T talked about this morning. I'm not going to go build something that's just locked down for me. I want to share it with everybody because of the cost of the thing. The numbers you actually get to are, as I said, less than 100,000 square foot is a small cell, picocell type market. Above 500,000 square feet is DAS. Between 100 and 500,000 is kind of this gray area, okay? So 125,000 is probably going to be small cell, 150, 200, you're getting into some side of DAS deployments, et cetera, et cetera. So that's how you can see how it starts to build from there. Wi-Fi also is just about everywhere. You've also, in an office, got wired Ethernet. So we assume that the voice coverage will really be the primary driver of these picocell deployments, is to get better voice coverage inside the building, not necessarily to provide data service. Whoa, that's hot. So, we asked people, these are consumers, where do you want your voice improved? This is your wireless voice service. Where would you like the service to be improved? We asked them, voice quality issues, like do you drop calls to improve, or voice quality, all these types of things. But this is actually, where do you want it actually improved? So 30% said, I want it better inside my home. you'll notice straight away that is bigger than the 11% who said it's bad, terrible coverage. Inside of my workplace, I'll tell you what these numbers are in a second, 7 and 15%. School, anywhere else, or around where I exercise, elsewhere outside my home or office, or nowhere. I'm just really happy. I'm a happy person. I have no problems. So 35% said that, or 25%. The blue bar are the people who just use their phone for personal use. They do not use the phone for anything to do with business, okay? And the red bar are the guys who use it for personal use and for business, i.e. all of us, right? So inside the home, you can see it matches, but when you get outside, basically 25% of the business guys are saying, yeah, it's good enough. Who here thinks it's good enough? See, and you're all biased because you're all selling stuff, right, to make it better. Yeah? And 2 of you said, yeah, this is good enough. Interesting. So the one we really care about here, of course, is around my workplace. So 7%, obviously they're using some phone, they're doing personal calls at work, which is interesting. But then 15% are actually using it for business as well. So 15% of the workforce in the United States said, I want it better in my office. Okay? That's the addressable market for a picocell. Now we get into the debate of, well, who's going to put it in? And who's going to pay for it? Is it the IT guy in the company? Is it the carrier who's going to put it in to get more of the business from that company? And the answer is yes, because there's this little thing called bring your own device, right? 98% of the small, medium businesses in the United States allow BYOD. 98%. The 2% who don't are in sensitive areas or buildings like chemical plants where you don't want people running around with RF devices. They limit what technology you can take in, okay? Now, of that 98%, about 2/3 have an official policy. The other third kind of let it slide, let it happen. We don't really care. But to say BYOD is not happening, not true. It is absolutely a trend that the company is saying, yeah, we don't have to buy anything anymore. Let them buy it, and we'll just take care of the costs as we need to go, pay for whatever is appropriate. So when it comes to this type of thing, who's going to improve it? Does the company really want to put in picocells for the employees who are bringing their own devices? It's got to be neutral host, obviously, because you don't know what's going to be bought in there. And the answer actually becomes some sort of managed service. Because what you could do on the device is actually partition part of the area of the device and have it for apps for the company managed under the control of the IT department, but then not actually buying the device, right? So you actually get into managed services and all these types of things as a justification for fixing this problem. So then we looked at how big are these buildings. And you'll remember I said that the deciding factor was not the size of the company, but rather the number of employees. I have a similar chart for number of employees. But I wanted to show you this one because this one drives DAS. We've sized the DAS market the same way by looking at the number of buildings and the size of those buildings and the number of floors. And we've worked out, Matt, who works for me, loves spreadsheets. We worked out how many nodes, how many systems you would have and how many nodes you would need for that DAS. And that's the report we're going to publish this week. What we did not do is put a dollar figure on it. I can tell you how many nodes you need, and I can tell you how big the buildings are, and I'll let you guys work out the cost, because 50 cents for the cabling, or it's 75 cents for the installation, or it's $4 for the whole building. Right? You guys can apply the numbers to that. And that's what we've done. But what this says is that 55% of the buildings in the US are actually up to 5,000 square feet. These are commercial buildings. And this is per floor. And only 0.2% are over 500,000 square feet per floor. The average number of floors, by the way, is like 1.7 or something in the US. And you can see that actually there's only 8, there's about 10% actually are over 25,000 25,000 square feet per floor. Say that one fast. So it's, you can see how the market starts to break down, but the number of buildings we've got to go after is actually relatively limited. So this is the addressable market, and it goes up a lot. It's pretty good, actually. And you don't know what the scale is, so it's even better. What I'll tell you, though, is that is 9 million. And if you want to assume that that is 0, you can, but you'd be wrong. But basically, we're looking at about 9 million picocells in enterprises by 2017 as a total addressable market to address the need. 9 million separate units. That's not 9 million companies, because remember, they could have multiple picocells per company, depending on the number of employees. But it's a pretty healthy market. All right, carrier metro cells. So this is good. Now we're going to get a little complicated. We do a lot of bandwidth modeling. So this is when you use your bandwidth by time of day. And I call this the Himalaya chart. So you go to work in the morning, and you're using data in the subway, on the bus. Nobody ever drives and uses data, obviously. Right? Right. Pandora is okay, right? But nobody's ever texting, are they? No. That's right. So you get this spike, you get to the office, you hit Wi-Fi, you go out at lunch, and you use a bit more then. You go sit in the park and watch Modern Family or something. You go back to the office, you hit Wi-Fi, you go home, and then you get home, obviously you hit Wi-Fi at home. And that's where the 3 peaks come from, okay? This chart says, okay, we know how much data you're using on average, so I can apply it by hour. The blue line is 2011, bumps down there. 2016 is that number. And you go, whoa, hang on a second. Those spikes have got really high, right? The reason is you all hear about the average usage going from 800 megs a month up to 4 gigs and all this type of stuff, right? True, it is true. It's going up a lot and it's going up rapidly. But it doesn't go up at the same time across the day. It goes up in these spikes. So what it means is you're going to use more data during the day, but you're going to use it at those 3 times, right? You're still on Wi-Fi in the office and at home. That's not counted in the 1 gig, 4 gig kind of numbers. So what we're doing here is we're actually amplifying the problem we've got in these different times of day, and we've got some serious problems start to appear, as you can see. So what we did was, and this, I'm showing you 3 charts here, which is like 15 spreadsheets. What we actually did was we looked at a metro market. We actually looked at Chicago. Chicago has about 3 million people live in it. But during the day, it actually goes up to about 3.3, 3.4 million people, with people commuting into the city, right? And what we did was we looked at the network capacity within Chicago. And then we looked at this demand and said, can the network deal with those spikes? And the answer is, this is the traffic it cannot deal with. The networks cannot deal with this today. Yes, we assumed you build a few more towers. Yes, we assumed LTE, et cetera, and you still can't deal with it. The other question I get on this is, yeah, but can I throw in some Wi-Fi, do that? We actually modeled that for San Francisco, if you could put in enough Wi-Fi to deal with the demand, and you cannot. If you did, you'd literally be walking on access point to access point to access point as you walk down Market Street in San Francisco. There's actually not enough backhaul in San Francisco to put all the Wi-Fi hotspots in you need to meet the demand. It doesn't work. Boingo has a market, I'm not saying that, but they cannot meet the need for the demand just with Wi-Fi in the next few years. So what this tells us is, at 8 a.m., this is 11, 12, and 16, by the way, so look at the orange line. We've got a problem at 8 a.m., we've got a problem at noon, we've got a big problem at 1 p.m., et cetera, et cetera. That spike is 16 times bigger in 2016 than it is in 2011. So when you hear about bandwidth going up by 5 times or 10 times, That's the average. That's the aggregate, right? The problem we've got is actually 16 times bigger in specific locations at specific points. Also notice at 2 p.m., we don't have a problem in 11 and 12, but we do by 16, right? The further out you go with this, there's more problems developed during the day. We need more capacity. So you've got to put small cells in. So what we've done here is take these spikes and say, how many sector channels do I need to add to meet these demands? That's what we've done. That tells us how many metro cells you need. We could fix this problem with more towers, but we're not going to build any more towers, right? Not going to happen. And remember, it does factor in LTE and more capacity and all those things just by the natural evolution of technology. So that is the growth for 3G and 4G cells, right? And 4G is that, by the way, 4G is LTE, not 4G marketing speak, right? Girl on motorbike again. It's LTE, not, never mind. You understand what I'm saying? 240%. So two things you look at this. You go, well, hang on a second. I've got a market right now for 3G metro cells. Why is that? Who's got an LTE phone? Wow, okay, pretty good. And we're the best in the industry, right? We're the guys in the know, right? Most people are still on 3G phones. So the capacity crunches we see today for bandwidth in the markets are actually on 3G. You want to put in a 3G metro cell today. Putting in an LTE small cell isn't going to do you a whole lot of good. It'll cover something that may not be covered, but it's not going to give you a whole lot of capacity that's not there because there's nobody using the towers almost right now. Give it a couple of years, and the demand for LTE increases such that we do need those LTE small cells, right? And the demand for the 3G cell drops off. So here's the problem, and it's a big, big problem. Do you go and put in a 3G cell today, knowing that in a couple of years' time, you're going to have to revisit that location and upgrade it to LTE? Because I can pretty much guarantee if you're going to put it in a location today, it is a problem today. It's going to be a bigger problem in 2016, right? We know that. It's the same location. People are not going to start moving to different locations just because it's LTE. So that's okay if we're going to do a couple of thousand cells. But if you're going to do 40,000, do you really want to revisit 40,000 small cells in 2 years' time after you've just spent X $1,000 putting them in? No. No. Right? And remember, these things are not on towers. They're on rooftops. They might be bolted to the side of the building. They could be up a light pole, right? They might be up a tree. I don't know. It may not be the easiest place or most convenient place to get to. It's not like a tower where you've got the tower with a fence around it, and then you've got a key and you go in and you climb up the tower. It's not that easy. So the idea of putting in something now that has to be upgraded is a problem, unless it is upgradable. So if we've got something that you can put in today that is then software upgradable, then maybe we've got something, right? The danger is, though, remember this is an addressable market, not the actual market. The danger is that the carriers say, I'm not going to do this. I'm going to take my pain right now. I'm going to start doing this in a couple of years and just do the red line because it's too expensive to put in 3G knowing I've got to revisit it, unless there's an upgradable solution or a dual mode solution. And that's the challenge with this. Okay? What else should I tell you about that? There was something else I was going to tell you, and I can't remember what it was. It'll come back to me. So, let's put all this together. There you go. The entire small cell market without DAS. Okay? And in 2017, that little lot comes to 21 million units. Okay? What you'll notice is, you see down the bottom, there's that red and blue there. Right? You see it just there? Right? That's my metro cells. So that becomes, whoops, that down there. Metro cells as a percentage of the whole are very small. But my residential femto cells are green. I've got my enterprise or venue pico cells up here in purple. The dollars involved in those are very, very different from a metro cell that's involved putting in for a carrier. So a femto cell, the cost on some of the new femto cell designs, hardware only, coming out of Europe right now for 3G, are in the $70, $80, $100 range per unit. And it'll go down from there, system on chip and all that type of stuff. A metro cell, no. It's going to be, it's a small cell. Best case right now in mass quantities, you put the hardware only, you're looking at like $2,500, $3,000. I haven't even put it in yet. I haven't put an antenna on it and all those types of things. And backhaul we'll talk about in a second. So the dollar, this is not a dollar chart, this is a unit chart, okay? But the one I do like is this idea of this enterprise femto cell here, this managed service, because whoever can crack that one and get into those buildings, and A, you can have a lot of units, B, you can have some pretty good revenue, and C, it could be pretty good recurring revenue over time. But you're going to have to work out the logistics of it. So, what are the takeaways? This is the what do you tell your boss you did for the last 2 days in New Orleans when he or she asks, okay? And if the answer's got anything with bourbon in it, you've got a problem. But I know you wouldn't do that. Small cells will be deployed. There are some naysayers out there, which kind of surprises me still, but there are quite a few people out there who say, nah, small cells won't work. The problems are too big, they will not work. I don't care. They have to work. How else are we going to get the capacity? We're not going to get another 500 megahertz from the government in the next couple of years, right? If we get it, it's going to cost you billions of dollars, and it's going to have other people in it, right? It's like buying a condo in a new building, and it's already got the squatters in it. You've got to kick them out, okay? So we need the small cells. We have to solve that problem at the end of the day. We need the capacity and the coverage. HetNet and small cells, there are no options. My children are the problem, okay? I'm not a problem. My kids are. I picked up my son from basketball a few weeks ago, basketball practice on Thursday night. It was the first day of March Madness. He's a big basketball guy. He gets in the car. He goes, Dad, I can't talk. Got to watch the game. And he pulls out his iPhone, his iPhone 4, and starts watching the basketball game on a 3G network, streaming it in the car. There's not a Wi-Fi location in sight, right? And I'm sitting there, he's going, yes, it's a great game. And I'm just thinking, just think of the bandwidth you're hogging up watching that video, right? But to my kids, they think nothing at all of watching something on Netflix on the TV, going outside, watching it, in the car as we drive somewhere, et cetera, et cetera. It's not even a consideration to them about how that's happening and all the things that are happening or if it's possible. To them, it is normal, okay? So we, as an industry, we've got to do this because we've got to get the capacity and the coverage out there. There's no option. There's a generation coming who are going to leave us in the dust in terms of expectations of what they can and cannot do on mobile devices. If it's not nailed to a tower, it's small. That's it. If you've got anything you sell to the wireless industry that doesn't involve a tower, put it under the small cell HetNet marketing banner and jump on board. It's great. It's a big train, and we're loving it. If you've got a tower product, I would call it a not small cell product. Because then when you do the Google searches for small cell, it'll come up in the keywords. What I didn't talk about today were the big issues that we have to address, and we do cover these in all the research, but I need to mention them. They're rather large. Spectrum. You need some spectrum to put these cells into. Right now, if your LTE is at 700 megahertz or your 3G's at 850 or whatever, you probably want to put the small cell up in the AWS band or even the 2.5 gig clear wire spectrum. Right? Get it away because of interference issues. There is something called EICIC, which is one of my favorite acronyms, and I can't remember if it's release 11 or 12 of the 3GPP standards, but basically what it does, it stops the interference if you take a small cell and put it into a macro cell at the same frequency, okay? It is not my favorite acronym, however. That belongs to QLIC, which is quasi-linear interference cancellation, which is just a fantastic acronym. And when people ask, what do you do? Well, I'm in the wireless industry. I deal with QLIC issues. Quasi-linear interference cancellation. Right? You're going to find out at the party how smart that person really is and how interested they really are in you. Right? If they leave at that point, it's over. That is a Qualcomm acronym. EICIC is not. But Qualcomm is the best at creating acronyms. They have a VP of acronym development. You think I'm joking. I did joke about that once with them, and they said, actually, we do have this group. Seriously, I'm serious. Yeah. So anyway, spectrum is a big issue. We will get more spectrum at some point in our lifetimes. I don't know where it's going to be, I don't know how much it's going to cost, and I don't know how big the channels are going to be, and I don't know when. At some point, we'll get some, but who knows when. Building a business plan, assuming you're going to get more spectrum, is just non-starter. Don't even go there. Just assume it's what we have today. The second thing is, where are we going to put these things? It's bad enough building a tower, right, to get the zoning in the right of way. We also assume we're going to just throw these small cells up on the side of buildings. Architects get pretty particular about how their buildings look, right? And they don't want all these nice shiny glass buildings with little gray warts around the side of them for the small cells. Also, we say, oh, well, let's just put it on the light poles. Light poles were designed for one thing. Anybody know what it was? Hold up a light. That is it. They were not designed to have little boxes bolted to them, which are heavy and change the loadings and all those things. And also, the people who own the lights or the buildings might go, you know what? They need me. They want me. They need me on that wall. Yes. Jack Nicholson type guys going, yes, money. I can charge them for that. It is very much that type of approach here. So location, where I'm going to put this, is a very, very big issue. Final issue is also very big, is this thing called backhaul. You've got to get the traffic off the small cell. Fiber would be great. Fiber doesn't tend to run up into the light poles because the light poles were designed to have lights in them. Right. Maybe eventually we'll start building lights with fiber in them because we're going to have to put small cells. Also, when you build a building, they don't tend to put fiber around the edge. They put the fiber in the conduits in the middle to feed the building, people working in the building, right? And then we said, well, we'll put them on the roof. There's not a lot of fiber on the roofs of buildings. There are AC units and power, but not a lot of fiber. So then we said, well, we'll just use microwave. And the guys come out there and say, yeah, we've got these microwave solutions, and we can do non-line of sight, and da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da. And you can, in some situations. In others, you can't. The best story I've got about this is one of the carriers, and it's not the one who's been on the agenda all day today, and it's not one who's really proud of their network, and it's not the one with the motorbike. Okay, but I won't tell you who it is. They went to do a trial with small cells in a town, and they went to get the permission, this is true, they went to get the permission to use the light poles in the downtown area, in like a 12 square block, city block area. And they were going to the planning committee, to get the final approval. They'd done all the work, all the technical work, and somebody made the mistake of showing a picture of what they were going to put up. And it had a little microwave dish, like yay big. And it looked like a microwave dish. And somebody said, what's that? They said, oh, that's the microwave. We need that for the backhaul. We have to get the traffic off. And we're going to shoot the microwave, this is what they said, shoot the microwave down the streets. And City Council went, woo, you're going to cook our residents with microwaves? I don't think so. And they never got past that point. They never convinced them. The whole trial was cancelled. If they'd shown a picture of a light pole with a gray box on top, completely nondescript, nobody would have, and they didn't use the words shoot and microwave, it probably would have been a lot better. So you have to be really, really careful. The way the operators look at this, in all honesty, it is a toolbox approach. You go to a market and you say, I have to fix these problems. Here's my box of solutions I have. I have this much spectrum available. I have this location available. I have this backhaul available. And these are my conditions. If you're putting a small cell into Austin, Texas, where I live, versus Seattle, those cities are actually very similar in some ways, except it rains rather a lot in Seattle and it never rains in Austin, right? So your propagation is very different from microwave and all those things. My view is these issues are big enough to throttle the deployments. They're not going to stop deployments. They will slow the deployments. If you've got all three of these in place as a carrier, then you've got the low-hanging fruit. The first cells that go in are going to be ones where they've got a hotspot problem, they've got the spectrum available, they've got the locations available, and they've got the backhaul available. Go drop in a small cell. That's where you're going to see the activity in the next couple of years. Some of these other ones are going to take longer to solve, but they will get there. Again, I don't think it's going to stop it, it will throttle it. Things in wireless take longer than we expect, right? Location-based services. Who remembers all the conferences we had about Tracy does, we were there. It took, what, 8, 10 years to get location-based services, and suddenly everybody's doing location-based services, right? Mobile medical. How many conferences are out there for mobile medical? And we're still not there yet. So things like this take time. The good news with small cells is we've been doing this for a few years. It will happen. There will be deployments. There will be growth. But don't look for, 1 million metro cells out there in 2014 or 15. It's not going to happen. It's going to be much less than that, but you will see them. Whew, questions? Wow, must be a question. Any question? Tracy will pay $50 for the first question. Oh.
Iain, what about the smart grid? Are we going to see it? I've read recently the city in Silicon Valley operating a smart grid for internet access for the residents. Are we going to see that as a small cell disruptor?
Is it on a tower?
No.
Is it a small cell?
If it's at my house, it is, yes.
Yes, good. Smart grids are small cells as well. Add those into the pile. So the question was, are we going to see smart grids? California did it. Right? They do a lot of things over there. Right? Here's the problem with the smart grids. Who has a smart electricity meter in their house? 5, 10 of you. You all live in California? Right? Who bought a electricity meter in the last 5 years? 10 years. Who's ever bought an electricity meter for their house? My point. How the heck are we going to get all those smart electricity meters into my house? I live in Texas. We don't care about green stuff. Green stuff is what you mountain bike down. Right? So there'll be pockets of this stuff when there's a nice new area. Now, if you're building a new residence or a new neighborhood, yeah, you put all the smart stuff in because it's cheap to do it then, right? It's really expensive to go retrofit unless there's some sort of mandate. So there will be pockets of this and there will be discussion of this. You may have noticed the housing market in the last few years hasn't been that great. And you'll notice that the discussion of smart grids kind of fell off as the housing builds fell off. As it starts to come back, we'll have that discussion again. But the retrofit is the problem because we don't all run down to Lowe's or Home Depot on the weekend. Oh, sorry, Home Depot on the weekend and go buy electricity meters, right? So, anybody else? Yeah. Go on, Zach, run. Run. Drink my coffee wellies.
I noticed one thing you didn't address was power issues. Like if you're going to put a small cell on a light pole, how are you going to power it in an emergency?
Yeah, you see that little ETC there? I'm assuming that location means we've got some power there as well, etc. Yes. Yeah. That ETC covers everything. Whoever's selling anything I didn't mention, it's in that one there. I didn't mention the brackets you need to bolt it. That's true as well. They're on there. So yeah, no, power is a big issue. And actually, it's a good point because, again, come back to the fabric of a building. There's not a lot of power out there, right? Power's on the inside. And when you look at the roof, good news, we've got the power, but it's connected to the AC units. And as the AC kicks in and out, you get these big spikes in the power. Not really good for RF equipment. So it's not as easy as it sounds, but it does fall under, etc. So, anybody else? Oh, now you're on a roll.
So Cisco has done some research that says a lot of the data, over 50% already, heading towards over 2/3 is video data.
Yeah.
And I'm wondering how video viewing patterns, I know you mentioned the example of your son watching the basketball game, but how do those patterns and the impact of high efficiency video codecs and things like that, new compression standards, play into your model?
Yeah. So Cisco does a lot of this good stuff, right? And we've got interesting. Cisco gets their data from a lot of different people, and our number is about 50%, 55%, I think it is right now, is video. It goes up to like 70 in the next couple of years, because video is a hog, as you know. So the answer is two things. One is most of that orange spike there is video, because the idea of going and sitting in the park with your sandwich and taking your iPhone or your tablet and watching Modern Family or The Office or whatever on Netflix is real, right? You can just stream it down and off you go. So it is a problem. This model, and I think the Cisco number as well, assumes you have got efficient codecs and compression in there. If you don't, we are completely hosed. So that's the number from what I've had conversations with them about this. From what I understand, I know this number, we assume there are efficiencies in the video compression at this. And there's various solutions out there that different people have got. But this is kind of almost like a realistic case. If you take out the compression, we got some serious issues. And frankly, the over-the-top guys, the Netflix and the Hulus of the world, what they really need are some decent wireless guys, so they understand what they're trying to do here, that you can't just take the smartphone and just go, oh, Netflix, and treat it like you do broadband at home. I think the biggest step the OTT guys have got to make is actually getting closer into the wireless networks and understanding what's going off in there. So, but yeah, that's in there. And it's pretty much based on the current technologies of what's, you can take out 20% of the payload and all that type of stuff. Right? It's not 80% or anything like this. Okay? Anything else? Wow. I kept this to an hour, Tracy. That's pretty good for me. I've got a minute left. Oh.
So what's the total addressable market?
What's the total addressable market for DAS? It's huge. Huge. Actually, the truth is, I can't remember because it's on my laptop. So what we did was looked at all the big buildings. With anything over 500,000 square feet, we put in a DAS system. And then we used a square footage per node, and I'm trying to remember what it was, but it was way less than 500,000. It's like 12, 15,000, something like that, 20,000 per node. The trick comes between 100,000 and 500,000. So what we did was we assumed that like at 200,000 square feet, maybe 20 or 30% would get DAS, right? At 250, 300, it was 50%, and then at 400,000 square feet, well, it's 90% DAS, okay? Because again, it's an addressable market, not if it's going to get built. Obviously, you're going to build in the bigger buildings first, and you're going to don't quote me on this number. You're looking at like over 1 million systems and 9 or 10 million nodes-ish. It was big. I mean, I know AT&T's talked about this 1,000 systems. I'm like, yeah, that's day one. Because there's a lot of buildings out there, right? And I found it interesting this morning, AT&T guy, I can't remember who was speaking, saying that, no more stadiums, let's go do buildings. I know he doesn't really mean that. I'm kind of paraphrasing. But he is right. The stadiums don't have a whole lot of people in them most of the year. And the office buildings and the big multi-dwelling units, of course, do. And by the way, of that 9 or over 1 million, most of that is office buildings. Multi-dwelling units is actually relatively small because they're already retrofitted with broadband and other things, other solutions, because they're residences, right? that it? Okay, give me a business card, I'll send you the presentation, I'll send you a code, et cetera, for a discount. And if you need me, you've got to grab me really fast because I've got a flight. Thank you.